Hey there, and welcome to Family Revenge. We're so glad you're here. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you can stay with us for every twist and turn. Let's jump right in. Kyle's retirement party was exactly what I expected: beer, bad barbecue, and a whole lot of stories I'd already heard 100 times. It was held in the VFW Hall just outside Cushing, Oklahoma, same place my cousin had his second wedding and my aunt hosted her 60th. Same creaky chairs, same sticky floors. I sat near the end of the table, next to a half-dead balloon arch and some lukewarm baked beans. Kyle, of course, was the center of it all, holding court in his old fire chief jacket while the guys clapped him on the back and handed him course after course. Our dad, Earl, stood right in the middle of the action, grinning like he built the firehouse himself. Man, remember that hay barn fire off Route 38? Earl was booming across the table. Kyle went up that ladder like a damn superhero. Hell, even the news crew showed up. People laughed. Kyle grinned. I just kept chewing. Earl pointed his plastic fork toward me without even turning. Meanwhile, Leah's over there drawing roads or some such. Gotta keep traffic flowing, huh? He chuckled like he'd told a joke. Quick note: before we start, how's your day going and where are you joining from? I forced a smile and nodded, swallowing the sour taste in my mouth. I'd driven 2 hours to sit here and be invisible again, just like every other family get-together. That's when the state commissioner walked in, the one from the Department of Infrastructure. Governor appointed, rarely seen outside the Capitol. He wasn't even listed on the invite, but there he was, shaking hands and nodding at Kyle's plaque. Then he stepped up to the mic. Before we wrap up, he said, I'd like to recognize someone else in the room. Leah Brennan, are you here? Every head turned. I stood slowly, wiping my hands on a napkin. You've led some of the most effective emergency planning work this state has seen, he said. The governor and I are proud to announce you'll be heading up the new Emergency Response Integration Task Force. Silence. Kyle's beer slipped from his hand and hit the floor with a dull thunk. No one moved to clean it. Earl blinked. Didn't say a word. I straightened my back, heart pounding in my chest. I accept, sir. It echoed in the room. Sharp. Final. The first clap came from a paramedic at the corner table, then another, and another. It built into a slow, unsure applause, like no one quite knew how to react. I didn't wait for them to catch up. I walked back to my seat, grabbed my water, and took a long sip. I took another sip of water and stared at the table, tuning out the applause like I'd trained myself to do since I was a kid. That started early, real early. I grew up in Drumright, about 20 miles west of here. One gas station, 2 stoplights, and a high school that smelled like mildew and burnt fries. Our house sat behind my dad's garage, where he fixed busted-up trucks and yelled at rusted bolts like they'd insulted his mother. Earl Brennan was a man who believed real work meant grease under your fingernails. If your shirt came home clean, you hadn't done a damn thing. He said it to Kyle like it was gospel. You keep showing him how it's done, he'd tell him after football games, clapping him so hard on the back I could hear the thud from the kitchen. That's how a man earns respect, sweat and bruises. I'd be sitting at the table with a first-place ribbon from the regional science fair, waiting to show it off. Earl would walk right past me to grab another beer. I learned real fast. Nobody clapped for microscopes. Nobody gave a damn how many digits of pi I could recite. If you weren't breaking a sweat or bleeding, you weren't worth mentioning. By the time I was 12, Kyle was already bench pressing more than half the team. He got scouted for a junior fire cadet program the second he turned 16. Dad bragged to anyone who'd listen. Hell, he even put the acceptance letter in the shop window like it was a trophy. Me? I was in debate club, math league, and top of my class. Didn't even get a nod at dinner. One night, after I won a district essay contest, I tried to bring it up. Hey, Dad, I got first place today in? He didn't look up from the TV. That ain't gonna feed you later, kid. You want to impress somebody? Change your own oil. So I shut up. I started keeping things to myself, taped my ribbons to the inside of my closet door, stuck my awards in a shoebox under the bed. If it wasn't going to matter, why waste the breath? Kyle and I weren't exactly close. He wasn't cruel, just tuned out. He had Dad's approval locked down, and that was all he needed. I was the quiet one, the book girl. Every family has one, the one who fades into the wallpaper. I remember in ninth grade, my guidance counselor, Mrs. Delgado, called me in after school. I figured she'd hand me a course form or remind me about attendance. Instead, she slid a pamphlet across the desk. Civil engineering, she said. You ever thought about that? Roads, bridges, water systems. You've got the brain for it. I flipped through the pages like it was a classified file. It didn't look glamorous, but it looked real. It looked like something I could actually do. Build things, keep things together. You're precise, she said. You don't rattle easy. That matters, I nodded, tucked the pamphlet into my backpack, and later stuffed it in my wallet like it was a ticket out. That night, I brought it up at dinner. I remember the smell of overcooked meatloaf, the buzz of a busted ceiling fan. Civil engineering, Earl snorted. You mean sitting at a desk making squiggly lines? That's what they're pushing on kids now? It's not just that, I started, but he waved me off. College is a scam, waste of good years. You'll be in debt till you're gray. You want to work? I'll show you how to work. Kyle laughed and tossed a roll at me. I didn't say another word, just nodded, cleaned my plate, and did the dishes like always. But I kept that pamphlet, pressed it flat behind my school ID, and stared at it every time I thought about quitting. Every time Earl made some crack about soft kids or paper pushers. Every time Kyle walked in covered in soot and Earl called him a hero. I never argued again. I just applied. FAFSA forms under my bed, essays typed up at the library, SAT prep books stashed behind the air filter manuals in the garage. I mailed out the application on my lunch break at the diner. I worked weekends. Never told a soul, because by then I knew better than to ask permission. I never waited for the acceptance letter to show up at home. I had it sent to my friend Marcy's house, just in case Earl got the mail first, and tore it in half before I could even read it. When I finally held it in my hands, big, bold letters from Oklahoma State saying, "Welcome to the College of Engineering." I didn't cry. I didn't celebrate. I just folded it up and went to work. A month later, I moved into a cracked one-bedroom in Stillwater, above a nail salon and a tax prep place. The walls were thin, the hot water barely worked, and I shared the building with a family of raccoons who lived in the attic. But it was mine. Classes hit hard from day one. Thermodynamics? That class didn't care how smart you were in high school. Fluid mechanics? You either kept up or you drowned. Half the kids around me had dads who worked in oil or were third-generation engineers. Most of them didn't even have jobs. I worked nights at a campus deli, slicing cold cuts until 2 in the morning, then cramming in formulas during my walk home. I'd pass out with my notes on my chest and my alarm set for 6. The guys in my classes didn't even look at me twice. If they did, it was to borrow a pencil or ask if I was someone's girlfriend. During one group lab, a guy named Brent looked at the calculations I'd written and laughed. "You sure these are right?" I looked him dead in the eye. "I'm sure you don't know what the hell you're doing." He didn't question me again. That second semester almost cracked me. Everything hit at once. A failed calc exam, a busted radiator in my car, rent overdue by 2 weeks, and a classmate's offhand comment. Some people just aren't cut out for this. He didn't say my name, but he was looking straight at me. I skipped dinner that night and walked the loop around campus 3 times until I could feel my legs again. I didn't quit. Spring of sophomore year, the rains came, real ones, torrential downpours that turned creeks into rivers and rivers into something worse. One of our professors asked for volunteers to help run hydrology models for the Army Corps. Just simulations, he said, nothing fancy. Except the numbers weren't lining up. The levee system near a town called Manford was flagged as safe, but something in the flow calculations didn't sit right with me. I reran the model twice, then 3 more times, using variables we hadn't even covered in class yet. What I saw scared the hell out of me. I sent an email to the Corps contact, attached my results, and went back to work at the deli. 2 days later, they closed the western levee and rerouted evacuation zones. Floodwaters came within 6 inches of topping it. 6 inches. That town was damn near underwater. The department head shook my hand. FEMA sent a letter to the dean's office. My professors looked at me different after that. Nobody back home knew a thing. At the next family dinner, some Sunday chicken fry at Aunt Carla's, Kyle went on and on about dragging a guy out of a flipped truck during a grass fire. "News crew caught it all," he said, passing his phone around with the video queued up. Earl slapped him on the back like he'd just won a damn war. "That's what a man does, runs toward the flames." I smiled, chewed slow, and nodded when they looked my way. "You still up there playing around with numbers?" Earl asked. "Yeah," I said, still crunching. Nobody asked about school, nobody asked what I'd done. But I remembered every dismissal, every shrug, every silence. I kept it all. Fuel. I kept it all. By the time I crossed that graduation stage, no family in the crowd, Just my advisor clapping from the aisle, I'd built up enough fuel to light a city block. Civil engineering degree in hand, I packed up my apartment in Stillwater, loaded my Corolla with everything I owned, and moved east to Tulsa. First job was entry level at the city infrastructure office. One of those jobs that sounds boring unless you know what it actually does. Roads, bridges, flood maps, storm drains, the veins and arteries of a city. I was assigned to a desk next to the copier and given a stack of aging sewer schematics. It wasn't glamorous, but it mattered. I kept my head down, learned fast, and spoke when I had something worth saying. The men in that office didn't know what to do with me at first. This quiet girl with a plain wardrobe and a sharper memory than any of them had bothered to keep. I watched. I solved things they missed. A year in, they shifted me to emergency planning. That's when things clicked. I didn't need spotlights. I needed systems. People counted on systems in crisis, and systems didn't get second chances. When I found a structural error on an overpass plan and rerouted construction just before a major storm, it kept 2,000 commuters off a bridge that would have failed under runoff. The supervisor who signed off on it got his photo in the paper. I got a nod in the hallway. I started keeping a notebook, not for anyone else, just me. I wrote down the projects, the deadlines, the near misses. I logged every late night, every quiet win, every time someone said good catch without looking up from their screen. Then came the 10-year high school reunion, back in Drumright, of course. The gym hadn't changed a bit, still smelled like rubber and sweat. Kyle walked in like a local legend, chest puffed, arms tanned, smiling wide. Earl showed up too, wore his shop jacket like it was a dress uniform. He did his usual rounds, bragged about Kyle's promotion to battalion chief, told some story about a cat rescue that turned into a kitchen fire. Everyone laughed. Then someone asked what I was up to. "Leah's in the city now," Kyle said before I could answer. "She's got a safe little gig with the roads department." Earl chuckled. "You still doodling on blueprints?" I didn't flinch, just sipped my punch and smiled. In my head, I saw the bridge again. The one I rerouted, the traffic that never got stranded, the lives that didn't make headlines because everything worked the way it was supposed to. I didn't say a word, but when I got home that night, I opened my notebook and wrote one more thing. Let them laugh. You're keeping the city standing. And I meant it. I meant it, until the day the water came. Late August. Hurricane season had been quiet up to that point, but we all knew that meant nothing. Models started spitting red warnings the second that low-pressure system dipped into the Gulf. When it curved northeast, the whole emergency planning team snapped into motion. We weren't rescuing people off rooftops. We weren't sandbagging levees with the National Guard. We were in a room with screens, printers, and black coffee, tracing roads, floodplains, and traffic flow in real time, praying we weren't already too late. When the levee near Pine Grove failed, it didn't crack. It collapsed. 18,000 residents downstream, one major hospital, 2 elementary schools, every highway south of town bottlenecked within 6 miles. I was on shift when the breach alert hit. Phones rang, people yelled, one guy puked in a trash can. I pulled up the evacuation model, killed the standard route, and started rerouting everything west through a stretch of highway we hadn't used in 3 years. Partly gravel, partly under light repair. Didn't matter. It was the only thing high enough and dry enough to hold. I got pushback. "We can't send ambulances through that stretch." "Better than sending them into 5 feet of floodwater," I snapped. "I'll flag the rough patches." I worked 36 hours straight, fueled by vending machine coffee and a single crushed granola bar I found in my drawer. Every hour, the model updated. I adjusted again, marked every impassable road, rewrote traffic light timings, rebuilt detours on the fly, and it worked. Evac zones cleared faster than expected. Emergency crews got out without needing air support. Only 5 homes reported critical flooding, 5 out of thousands. The FEMA official showed up a week later. He came to the office in a rumpled suit, handed my manager a sealed envelope, and asked if I was the Leah Brennan who rerouted the Pine Grove corridor. I stood. He looked at me like he expected someone taller. "Well," he said, holding out his hand, "you saved a hell of a lot of people." Then he left. My manager slid the envelope across my desk without saying a word. Inside was a thank you letter, personally signed. I folded it carefully and stuck it between the pages of my notebook. The next weekend, I had to drive back to Drumright for my cousin Chelsea's wedding. Small town, barn venue, mason jars for cups. I wore a dress that still smelled faintly like the city office. I hadn't had time to wash it. Kyle stood up to give a toast during the reception. The whole room hushed like he was royalty. Being a firefighter teaches you what matters, he said, holding up his glass. Family, sacrifice, being there when people need you. He gave some story about a lightning strike on a farmhouse roof and how his crew got there just in time. Folks clapped, cameras flashed. Earl leaned over toward a guy at our table and said, proud as ever, "Now that's leadership." I didn't look at him, just poured myself another cup of punch and stirred the ice with my straw. Recognition wasn't the point. I knew that. I'd always known it. But damn, sometimes the silence felt heavier than the work itself. Sometimes the silence felt heavier than the work itself. But it didn't stop me. Not even 2 months after that wedding, I was called into a briefing room at the Emergency Operations Center. 3 counties were under fire watch, and the wind was already throwing sparks like confetti. They handed me a headset, a laptop, and a seat in the corner. Coordinate the water drops, prioritize crews. If they're out there, you track them, my supervisor said. Don't miss. I didn't blink. The wildfires started in Payne County, then jumped east. Within hours, we had brush fires swallowing back roads, cutting through farmland, and closing highways. The radios never went quiet. I tracked every unit on the ground, every chopper in the air, every tanker truck low on foam. I didn't eat. Didn't blink much either. Around hour 15, I noticed a weird lag on one of the units. 3 crews had moved into a dead zone near Council Hill. Their pings weren't updating. I called it out. No one answered. I flagged the dispatcher, confirmed location, then reran the satellite overlay. Wind shift, fast. Looked like the fire was wrapping around them. They were boxed in. I radioed for an immediate water drop, redirected the closest bird, and gave them a tight path through a field most folks didn't even know was drivable. 10 minutes later, I got word. They made it out. 1 engine had burn damage. No injuries. The fire captain called me the next day. Voice like gravel, dead serious. "You're the reason they're alive." I didn't know what to say. A week later, a small box showed up at my desk. No card, no note. Inside was a shoulder patch, black and red with bold white letters stitched across it. "You kept us alive." I stared at it for a long time, just held it. Then I opened my desk drawer and slid it inside, right next to the FEMA letter. Later that evening, my phone rang. I didn't even look. I knew that ringtone. Earl. "Did you see?" he asked, his voice loud, full of pride. "Kyle's gonna be on the 6 o'clock news. They're doing a whole segment on him. Wildfire hero, they're calling it. Channel 5. I closed my eyes. "Good for him," I said. There was a pause, like maybe he expected more. I didn't give it. He muttered something about the interview being live, then hung up. I sat there in my office as the sun went down, silence creeping in through the windows. Then I opened that drawer one more time, looked at the patch, and shut it again. That was enough. That was enough. For then, 2 weeks later, I got the promotion. Quiet, no press release, no party. Just an email from the city manager and a new nameplate for my door. Deputy Director of Emergency Infrastructure and Planning. I stared at it for a second, then set it on the desk without a word. Thanksgiving rolled around right after. I hadn't planned to go back to Drumright, but Mom guilted me over the phone. Said she'd made my favorite pecan pie, and that Aunt Carla was bringing her homemade rolls. I packed a bag, drove out the night before, and stayed at a budget motel off the highway, the kind with scratchy towels and a door that stuck when it rained. Dinner was the usual. Kyle in the middle of the room, beer in hand, talking like he was on a stage. His wife nodded at all the right moments. Earl leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, smiling like his boy had invented fire. "So I've been thinking," Kyle said, stuffing a roll into his mouth. "I might open my own consulting firm. Private fire safety, big contracts, more control, less politics." "Damn right," Earl said. "You don't need the city. You are the city I reached for the sweet potatoes, trying to ignore the sting in my jaw." Earl turned toward me, waving his fork. "Leah's probably close to retirement from her comfy little cubicle by now." Someone chuckled. Kyle smirked. I didn't bite. Just clenched my teeth, swallowed the burn, and kept my eyes on my plate. Then my niece, Kyle's oldest, 12 maybe, looked over and asked, "Do you like building stuff?" That one hit different. I paused, set down my fork, looked her right in the eyes. "I like keeping things standing." She blinked, confused. Everyone else had gone quiet, probably waiting for me to elaborate. I didn't. I didn't need to. Let them sit in it. Let them wonder what the hell I meant. After dessert, I helped Mom with the dishes. Kyle bragged about some news segment he'd been asked to comment on. Earl laughed from the living room like someone had told a joke only he got. I stood at the sink, rinsing pie crust off a plate, thinking about the water model I ran 2 weeks ago that kept an entire industrial corridor from going under. I didn't say a word. I just dried my hands, grabbed my coat, and left before anyone could start in on Christmas plans. They didn't see it. They never had. But I knew. And for now, that was enough. For now, that was enough. But I knew this day would come. I sat near the back of the banquet hall, same sticky floors, same sagging streamers, watching Kyle soak it all in like a man getting knighted. Retirement party, Cushing VFW. Full turnout. City officials, fire crews, old friends, half the town. He wore his Class A dress blues, polished boots, rows of medals shining under the fluorescent lights. His wife beamed like he'd just won the presidency. And Earl was in rare form. He'd already circled the room twice with a beer in one hand and his arms slung over shoulders, talking loud enough to drown out the DJ. When it was time for speeches, of course, Earl took the mic first. "Now I know y'all think you've seen bravery," he said, pacing the stage like he owned it. "But let me tell you about the barn fire back in '09. Kyle didn't even blink, ran in while the whole roof was coming down. Saved 2 horses, a dog, and the farmer's liquor stash." The room burst out laughing. Kyle raised his beer and gave that practiced, humble nod. "Damn proud of this boy," Earl said, getting a little misty. "Born to serve," led from the front. Didn't hide behind no desk. I took a sip of my water and looked away. They handed Kyle a plaque, a medal, another round of applause. Earl leaned in and added, "This town's safer because of him." People clapped harder. Then, right when the noise hit its peak, the state commissioner stood up. No mic, no music, just his voice. Calm, clear, final. "If I could say a word," he said. People hushed immediately. "I'm honored to be here for Chief Brennan's retirement. He's served this region with courage and grit. But while we celebrate service, we must also recognize vision, the kind that sees danger before it comes." He turned, looked right at me. "And that's why I'm proud to announce that Leah Brennan will be appointed to lead the new statewide Emergency Response Integration Task Force." Silence. For a full 3 seconds, not a single fork moved. Kyle's beer slipped from his hand and hit the floor with a soft thunk. He didn't even reach for it. Earl froze, hand still half raised, mouth slightly open. "She has led behind the scenes for over a decade," the commissioner said. "She's the reason systems held when they should have failed. It's time someone who understands the entire system runs it." His voice didn't shake. Mine didn't either. I stood, straight-backed, chin up. "I accept, sir." It rang out louder than I expected. The first clap came from one of the younger firefighters near the punch table, then another. Slowly, people stood, not in a rush, not roaring, just rising, one by one. A slow standing ovation. Kyle still hadn't moved. Earl stayed seated, arms crossed, jaw tight. I didn't look at him. I just walked back to my table, picked up my water, and took a long sip. Let the rest sink in. I didn't linger. As soon as the applause faded, I walked straight out the side door and into the night air. The chill hit sharp across my skin. No wind, just quiet and cold. Gravel crunched under my boots as I crossed the lot toward my truck. I'd almost reached the driver's side when I heard fast footsteps behind me. "Leah! Hold up, Kyle!" I turned, leaned against the door, arms folded. He stopped a few feet away, breath visible in the dark, face red from either the drinks or the shock. Probably both. "Why didn't you ever say?" he asked, voice tight. "All those years, all that stuff you did. Why didn't you tell anyone?" I looked him dead in the eye. "You never asked." He flinched, just slightly. "I mean," he scratched the back of his neck. "I didn't know it was like that. You were always so quiet. I don't know what I figured." He trailed off, searching for something to say that would land right. It didn't come. "I wasn't hiding," I said. "I was working." He nodded slowly. "Guess I thought I had the tough job." I didn't respond. Let him stew in it. I wasn't here to fix his guilt. After a beat, he took a step back. "Well, congrats. You earned it." I gave a small nod. "Drive safe." He walked away. Back in my truck, I sat in the silence for a minute before turning the key. The radio was off. I didn't need music. By the time I got home, it was close to midnight. I kicked off my boots, hung my jacket, and checked my phone. One text from Earl. Didn't know. I see it now. Proud of you. I stared at the screen. No fanfare. No long speech. Just that. I smiled, faint and tired, but real. Then I put the phone face down on the counter and didn't reply. Not yet. In the back room, my home office sat just like I left it. I opened the bottom drawer. Inside was the patch. You kept us alive. The FEMA letter. My notebook. Years of work, proof that it happened. I sat down, ran my fingers over the stitching, then let my hand rest. The silence was still there, but now it didn't feel heavy. Now it felt earned. Now it felt like mine.